Okay, so now we've got our tire surfaced. So all we need to do is give it some light and create some shadows from it. So in your Lightwave, there's always one default light. So I've selected that light from the bottom selection here, and I'm going to press 5. That is my light view. That's a quick shortcut to go to the light view. I always do that because that helps me very, very easily set up the light. I'm going to select move, and with the right mouse, hold your Apple key on the Mac, move it up, and then with the left mouse, I can move it in. Right mouse to move it down. I'm going to rotate a little bit, and then I'm going to hit Create Key, and that locks that light in place. Now I'm going to press the Item Properties button to open up the light properties. I'm going to go to Global Illumination and bring my ambient intensity down, to about, I don't know, 5 or 7%, something like that. Okay, because the default 25% is a little too bright. And what this is the area not hit by light, the ambient. So if my light source is concentrated here, I don't want much light spilling back there. Okay, and this would help eliminate some of that. And I give it a little bit of a tint, just so it's not so white. Close that, which brings me back to my light properties. And light is never white, so I'm going to click that and give it just a little bit of an amber tint. Okay, because that pure white light just is a little harsh, a little unrealistic. Alright, so now what I'm going to do is my light type right now is a default distant light. I'm going to make it a spotlight. Okay, and you can see that this cone suddenly appears. Again, remember, I'm in the light view, so I can see exactly what the light sees. Now, this little dotted line that appears in Lightwave 7.5, this is the spotlight soft edge angle. Okay, the cone angle, and I'm going to go to perspective view by pressing 4. You can see if I actually just move this cone angle, see the cone of the light changing? That's the spread of the light. Okay, this right here, the spotlight soft edge angle, see how that changes when I move that? What that is the fall off from light to dark. So where the light hits to where the light does not hit, that will soften the transition between. And honestly, the easiest way to show you is, let me bring this to 0. Here's my light. 0 spotlight soft edge angle. I'm going to press F9, give you a quick render. Let's see how that light's very hard? See that? Just a hard edge. Okay. What we want to do instead is bring that spotlight soft edge up. And I'll go back to my camera view here. Press F9. Now the spotlight soft edge, much, much softer. But we got a few more things to do first. You might have noticed that looked a little odd, like the light was just hitting over here, which technically it was. The reason you saw it that way is because it had no shadows. So I'm going to click over to the Shadow tab, and instead of a Ray Trace shadow, I'm going to put on Shadow Map. Okay, and that is a shadow generated on memory. It's only available to spotlights. But what I want to do is increase my shadow map size to about 3000. Okay, and what that'll do is put more memory into the shadow, basically giving it better quality. And the shadow fuzziness up to about 4 or so. I'm going to close this panel, and I'm going to say File, Save Scene. I always save the scene before I render. Just habit. And then I'm going to press F9 again. And we'll wait for that little render to pop up. Okay. And I have to reposition the light because I'm not quite seeing it on the floor. Okay. So let's go back here to our surface editor. Let's take a look at the floor and see what's happening. I have a hunch that our floor, let me check that again. Our floor is a little odd. For some reason, we're not getting the shadow the way we should. And when that happens, sometimes the floor is facing the wrong way. It's not in this particular case, but there's my problem right there. See that? I actually was assuming the floor had stayed underneath the tire where I had put it. Somehow it got moved down, and I might have moved it accidentally. So I'll select the floor, and actually I'll go to a side view by pressing 3 on the keypad. And I'll just click the green arrow, which will drag it up. I know why this happened. Do you remember when I had sized that floor? When I sized it, it actually sized on the Y as well. There we go. And I'll hit create a key at 0. You can also use the enter key to lock it in place. Go back to my camera view by pressing 6 and press F9 to render. And now that the floor is brought up, it'll actually catch the shadow. There we go. Okay. Now, if you remember when I had surfaced this wheel, this chrome area here, I actually went and I put on ray tracing and spherical map. Well, in the rendering tab right up here, the rendering drop down, there's render options. Well, if I put on ray trace reflection, okay, that wheel now will reflect that pool image as well as the floor and whatever else is around it too. Right now there's nothing else. And the benefit of that is just a little bit more realism. You can see a little bit more of the floor right in there. And then you still get some of the image reflected in there. And if this were moving and you had things in front of it, it would pick up those highlights and reflect those as well. For right now, this is just fine. Except it's a little boring back here. Okay, so let's put a little light back here to give this a little more flair. So first thing I'm going to do, save scene. Okay, every time I get to a stage that I like, I save the scene. Now let's go back to our lights, and I'll choose even a perspective view here, and I'll zoom out by clicking and dragging up here. There's our light. I like this light. I'm going to hit P for properties. I set up all these parameters, all the shadows, all the cone angles. Why don't I just copy it? That'd make things a lot easier. So I'll go up to Add, Clone Current Item. What's the current item? Well, it's this light down here. That's what's selected. That's why it's yellow and you see the control handles. And I'll click OK. It clones it in place. You can see it now says Light 2. If you'd like to rename this, you can say Replace, Rename Current Item. And we'll just call this Backlight. Now it has a name. Okay. I generally do this if I have more than like 3 lights, 2 or 3 lights, just to keep organized. Okay. This backlight, I'm going to go to Light View. Close this for the time being. And light is selected, the backlight. I want to select Move, and I want to click and drag and move it to the back. And then I'm going to say Rotate, and I'm going to rotate it around. And just point it to the back of the tire. And then I'll create a key. Okay, that's create key down here. Add 0 just to lock it in place. Go back to my camera view. I can see the light right there now. I hit P for item properties for the light. But this backlight, I want to make just a nice blue. Okay. Now see how it shines through? That's going to happen unless I have shadows on, which I do. Okay, so that's actually pretty important. Otherwise, the light's just going to shine through. It's not going to know to cast a shadow. Now, you'd think that your main light would be in front, which it is. But because this light is tinted, it actually might need to be a little bit brighter. So I'm going to make it 140%. Close the panel. Hit S to save. And press F9 to render. One thing people seem to forget is that because the little sliders in many control areas stop at 100%, it doesn't mean that that's the only value you can use. You can bring lights up to 3000% if you want. Okay. So there's just a nice little soft blue light in the background. I cast through the tire a little bit, so I need to make my inner disc a little bit larger. But some tires do actually, you can see all the way through, so that's okay. And what I want to do is just change this floor. Let's just give this floor a little bit more punch. So I'll go back to my surface editor, go to Tire Floor, and I'm going to give it a very pale green color. I don't know why. And I'm going to make the floor a little reflective, which means bring my diffuse down a bit. It doesn't need to be really too shiny. Maybe, why not? We'll make it shiny. And I'm going to make it slightly reflective, and I'm going to tell it to be ray traced. Doesn't reflect an image, just ray trace and reflect the backdrop. The backdrop right now is just black. And then I'm going to go back to render options and make sure that ray trace reflection is on, which applies to this floor reflection as well. So that's good. And I'm going to say File, Save All Objects, because I made a change to that surface. I'll press F9 again. It might take a little bit longer to render now that the floor reflection is on. Remember, every little thing that you add is going to add to your render times. But you'll see here that it's worth it because now the floor has a little more life to it and reflects the tire. Okay, so now there's a nice reflection in there. I think the last thing I'm going to do is just add a little bit of sort of a parchment to the floor. And I'll do that by coming up here to the color and clicking T for texture. Panel looks exactly the same as it did when we created a bump map, except instead of using an image map, we're going to say procedural. And remember, this is for the texture editor color floor. And I'm just going to say, oh, give me this like a deep green. And I'm going to open up Viper here, just so I can see what's happening. And let me remove this. I'll show you again. Here's the floor, how it looks now without the reflection. When I click the T button and I choose procedural, automatically this is what happens. Then I'm going to change the color to just a deeper green. And that's now what happens to the floor, which is actually, that's okay. I could change the size if I need, if I want to make smaller values. Okay, and what I'm doing is I'm just dirtying up the floor a bit. Now, it's a little strong, so I just want to bring the opacity down about halfway. And that's fine. I'll click Use Texture, Save All Objects. Oops. Save All Objects, say OK. Close that, File, Save Scene. The last thing I need to do is go to Cameras, hit Item Properties. 640 by 480 is fine. I'll anti-alias it a little bit so it smooths out the jagged edges. And I want to make sure that under Render Options, I have my Image Viewer set. So Render Display is set to Image Viewer. And that will pop up the render after I press F9, which is Render Current Frame. And you'll see that Lightwave with an enhanced low anti-aliasing is rendering in 5 passes. Okay, so what it does is it draws the polygons, draws out the floor with the reflections. Now you'll see it do another pass, rendering polygons, redraws a little bit, and then it's going to redraw the floor. Now it's doing number 3. And this is a sub-pixel render, and what this is doing is shifting the pixels and basically aligning them so that you have a smoother image. If you do a low anti-aliasing or a medium, not the enhanced version, it's basically a blurring, and it's blurring the pixels slightly so that they appear cleaner and smoother. So here's our 5th pass, and because we had the image viewer set, we'll click Continue. The render pops up, and we can see we got a nice clean edge here. Got our tire treads, got reflections, got some lights. And we'll go File. I'll save it out as a JPEG. I'll put it right in the Images folder. We'll say Tire Render. And click Save. And that's it. Just one tutorial. Very easy, very simple, but you can see just how nicely you can create something in not much time at all through Lightwave and Modeler, and get a great looking render. Okay, so this is just a sample of how our 3D Garage courseware is going to work. Again, we're going to start out much more basic, going through all the panels, all the options, and then we're going to take you much more advanced than this, using some of the more intricate tools, getting into the scene editor, the graph editor, and using a lot of these other interesting controls. For right now, I hope you like this. I hope this is valuable to you, and we hope to see you with an order for our 3D Garage Lightwave Signature courseware.